There is a space where you are all you need, where you are all you want. All there is here. Welcome to the Source Connection, conversations about who we truly are, the possibilities of creation and the new earth we are birthing, with your hosts, Tara Long and Liz B.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to one more episode of The Source Connection. Some people call me Liz B. I'm here with my co-host, who some people call Tara Long, and our very special guest, who some people call Meena. Let's take a moment to just settle in this now, grounding ourselves and connecting to the possibilities that are being presented right at this second with every breath. You can choose to close your outer eyes and just connect to your inner resources. As you deepen the breath, just start noticing what's going on in your bodies. Physical, mental, emotional, energetic, etc. Bringing all of them together into your heart space so you can literally visualize all of them and start gathering them closer in this one spot, integrating them together, synchronizing all of you into the beating of your own heart space. Breathe deep into the belly space, the lower abdominal lung chamber, and then bring that air up to your chest and your clavicular area. And then as you exhale, just do the opposite movement. Just really infuse yourself with the physical quality of air and also the energetic quality of it, prana. Breathing in coherence and breathing out confusion. Breathing in peace and breathing out turmoil. Breathing in I am. Exhaling loving awareness. And just keeping that mantra vibrating mentally for the next few rounds of breath. I am on the inhale, loving awareness on the exhale. Opening the space for the field of every possibility, knowing that we are safe, we are always taken care of, we are loved, supported, connected. And before we close, find a way to discover your heart beating, either on through your pulse, your wrist, or your heart space, your chest. I like doing it on my neck. And just feel your heart beating. As we all tap into the field of unlimited possibilities and potential, let's take 3 deep inhales together and let's sigh it out. Welcome back again. Mm. Thank you for being here with us today, Mike.
Thank you. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Needed that.
So I find it more interesting to hear from our guests what brought you to this now moment here with us. If you can give us a quick recap of, your story and how you landed here.
Wow. That is you have 3 hours.
You do. Oh, by the way, guys, this episode is a weekend with Mike Meena, so
Yeah.
hang tight.
Yeah, buckle in. Here we go.
Yeah, I've got a wireless GoPro, so I'll just be walking and talking for the next 36 hours. Wow. I've told this story a few times on other podcasts, but I don't know if I've really gone the whole distance here in terms of, my quote unquote awakening and how I kind of left Babylon and have started this journey. But essentially, since I was born, I've always felt like an outcast, a misfit, somebody who didn't fit into normal society. I was often alone, playing in my own imagination as a child. That's where I was most comfortable. And that led all the way up into high school, and where I was, I guess traditionally a nerd, considered a nerd. And, enjoyed playing like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and just really kind of involved in my own imagination and had no concept of the opposite sex. I mean, I was attracted to females, but I had no idea how to even talk to a girl.
Yeah.
And I was just felt very awkward in many respects because I just didn't feel like this world was right. Like, it just felt so awkward and weird. And it wasn't really until I went to college where I had I must say it was due to mushrooms, taking mushrooms, that psychedelics, that really woke me up to the wonders of my consciousness. And I came from a Catholic background where I was an altar server for I think 12 years, a long time. I mean, into high school, I was an altar server, and I had even considered going into the priesthood. At one time, I went to an all boys Catholic high school, and I was really seeking my spirituality and not finding it in the church. However, I'd had many experiences in the dream realm with lucid dreaming, out of body experiences, interactions with other forces and entities. So I knew there was a spiritual realm, and I've always intuitively known that there was something far beyond this avatar that we populate here. And it was actually, when I took the psychedelic mushrooms, I was a freshman in high school, and I was propelled into, in college, excuse me, and I was propelled into another reality. And that really opened up the doors of perception, like literally the doors, and I was listening to Jim Morrison on my CD, man, because I was a late 90s kid. So I had a backpack full of CDs, and it was like Pink Floyd, The Doors, and actually Chemical Brothers.
Yes.
But the original Chemical Brothers.
Yes.
And I was on my skateboard with my headphones on, and I was just skating around campus listening to that music and really taking it all in. And then it was just like I had this epiphany that I was infinite, that everything around me, my perceptions were limited to a certain bandwidth, and that I was so much more. And I became just ecstatic that I had to go tell everybody. So I started running around and going to everybody I knew, telling them I loved them, and that the world is so much more than we ever knew. And I just had this download, this gnosis of really why I'm here. And I remember just running down the dorms into every dorm room of everybody I knew, and just hugging them and hanging out and obviously tripping balls. But it wasn't like I felt like I had to shout to the off the rooftops of the world about how glorious this creation is and how glorious this world is and how lucky we are to be here. And I just was filled with love like I've never felt before. I remember calling my sister. She was at home. She was a senior in high school, and I was like, I love you. I'm so sorry for, having that total moment, right? When you're on a substance like that I've never been on, because I was a sober kid. I was not straight edge in the sense of having that personality of a straight edge punker, but our crew, we were straight edge in the sense we didn't do drugs or drink or anything in high school, really. So I kind of had this interesting perspective on that you're kind of a loser if you're getting drunk and stuff. But so it was quite an amazing moment, and that was a huge shift in my life. And then fast forward, through college, and now I was kind of I discovered DJing and working in music, and I switched my major after that. From I was going to be pre-law and be an attorney, I decided to go into film. And so I became a film major, and I made it my mission to produce amazing, life-changing media, documentary films and things like that. So I was very much attracted to, I've always been into film and wanting to make films. So and then that I did end up going and working in Hollywood for 10 years. And it was never really the right fit. I think Hollywood itself wasn't the right place for me. Obviously, it's a pretty dark place. And so I met in college Brian Lando, who was a great friend of mine through DJing. And then his dad is Dr. Bear Lando, of course, who is the founder of Alpha Vedic. Yes. And then the rest is kind of history as we developed that mentorship kind of connection. And he's been a great aid in my unfoldment into who I am now. And so I left Hollywood in 2016, moved my family up to the middle of the forest and focused on Alpha Vedic, and here we are.
Wow. Thank you. For our listeners who haven't tapped into the wonders of the Alpha Vedic community, I highly recommend. It's everywhere. You can find them on YouTube, Telegram, and just the discussions on Telegram, even though I can keep up with all of them, are just so rich. And that space is just so nourishing for me personally. And then on Discord, I mean, yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, and we're working on launching our own private platform that will be coming out on alphavedic.com, which I'm really excited about because that's going to allow the community to go next level in terms of having that digital connection, which I think we'll talk about today, in the digital realm, and then transferring that into the real world in a way that's in the private and not even on Telegram or anything. And that will have like all that functionality you get in traditional social media that has been, co-opted to steal our louche, if you will. This will be in a sacred space that will allow us to message and connect and create forums and groups and take those ideas and expand upon them and then take them into the real world in profound ways through our collective soul consciousness. So very excited about the launch of that, which is just around the corner.
So Mike, is that in still Web 2 or are you talking about Web 3? I know you're involved with Qortal. So like
what is opening up?
I know. But I'm so interested in Qortal and like that whole business of decentralized, internet. So is this a stepping stone to that or
and Tara, that's I love that you went right there because this is an important topic to get into. Obviously, a big reason why you're having me on today. What is Web 3.0? And according to the branding and the marketing of the corporate cryptosphere versus what Qortal's doing and where we should be going. I'd love to illuminate your audience a little bit on that. But in terms of in terms of this Alpha Vedic site, first it's going to be on the traditional World Wide Web. However, it will be encapsulated in a PMA, which is a private organization. I don't know if you guys are super familiar with the kind of public versus private. You've had Tom Barnett on here, so
we're pretty familiar. I've been studying natural law for the past year and a half.
Yeah.
So,
oh, awesome. Have you guys by chance heard of the Law for Mankind course?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We both taken the first module, so.
Oh, wonderful! Wonderful. Yeah, Greg and John are doing super, super important work.
Yes.
And I've actually had the pleasure of working intimately with them, especially Greg. I actually did a crypto kind of course for Law for Mankind with Greg. So if you guys do go, those listening, The Sovereign's Way is an amazing course that really helps folks that are new to the space of understanding the private versus public, living man, woman versus kind of the unliving, undead, corporate straw man that we've been tricked into thinking is reality. They've done an amazing job of laying that all out and basically creating a practical pathway towards implementing that in your life so that you can have remedy for any disharmony in your life, which is really all this is trying to do, is maintain the harmony so that you aren't trespassing against others, and if they are trespassing against you, how you can find remedy and get back to balance. That's all the law is for. Basically we've been it's been hijacked into commerce and to all of these other things so that those who feel that I need to be on the top can maintain this sort of top-down control, even though nature isn't supposed to work that way. So our reality's been hijacked by the legal system, and the Law for Mankind is doing God's great service by bringing back the law. So I bring that up. I bring that up because they have a wonderful awareness too about the importance of still playing in new technologies like cryptocurrencies and stuff as a means towards moving into the greater fulfillment of what the law can mean for actually living men and women transacting with each other in honest, open, meaningful, sacred ways. And that's transacting. That's all we do in this realm is we transact through, whether that be through an energetic flow of money or through us giving each other a hug when we see each other. It's just a transaction of energy. And so, of course, we can go deeper into this, but my goal and my role, I think, here on this planet, in this realm, is to help us get to the next level of going to a deeper understanding of how we can create the technology to better deliver that energy between each other, so that we aren't kind of forced down these channels of, I hate to say enslavement, but
but that's fair. That's fair.
We don't need a sugarcoat.
We don't.
How the current system is, the debt system, the money system that is now, right? So, this can get really deep. But in terms of Alpha Vedic right now, we're starting. It's a kind of a crawl, walk, run methodology. So we're starting still in the old system somewhat, but we will be transitioning slowly into the new system, which Qortal will be the base infrastructure for, hopefully.
Nice.
Yes. That was something that I was excited to talk about, Qortal, when most people are still kind of navigating, we all are to an extent, but just the traditional ways of doing things. And when you talked about bringing the sacred into this online sphere and this space, that was so beautifully said. And if you can expand on Qortal a little bit and just kind of tell people what that is and what's the vision?
Sure. So, to back up a little bit, where are we now? We are right now in a place where technology is been hijacked. Technology is simply, the root of it is Greek technologia, is simply the structuring and the sort of playing out of how we can initiate our art, or how we can deliver our art, our creative energy through a means of delivery, or sort of mechanization of it. Or, we are technology. One of the greatest technologies ever is the book, right? The book, for thousands of years, allowed for thoughts and ideas of a single individual or group of individuals to be crystallized and encapsulated in time, so that others could experience it. That is an amazing technology. Technology is awesome. Technology is the representation of our creative means of why we are here, right? So we shouldn't fear technology. However, technology has been inverted by those who lack the ability to create, because they've given up their divine connection because of greed or lust or any of these sort of, I guess, the falling of their soul.
Right.
And they can come back. But right now they think that they have the way, and that way is through certain digital technologies that are unfortunately going again, or only on one wave path of the two-way cycle of the life-death. They're just on the death cycle. And so what we want to do is bring back the technology of, like, the book, or the technology of fire, for instance, because fire gives life and takes away, right? And bring that into the digital realm, back to the digital realm. Because the digital realm, while it is just a simulacra of the greater consciousness of the analog, it's just a binary system. I feel personally, and I know a lot of people in quote unquote blockchain or crypto that are the original, like cypherpunks, which I'll explain what that is in a second, they saw the digital realm as a means for freeing us so that we could then evolve back to what we're supposed to be. Because of, and we can see that with the original, or how we've been able to use the internet, even though the internet has been controlled and manipulated for so long, it still is a very rudimentary beginning towards this, I guess, this return to our psychic abilities to connect and to be a consciousness of one, right? And so we're seeing that unfold right now over the last 30 years with, the explosion of global consciousness. The internet has played a massive role in the quote unquote Great Awakening, of course, and nobody can deny that, right? As somebody who grew up in the 90s, a 90s kid, proud 90s kid, I look back and that was a double-edged sword of ignorance, because I remember the times, especially in the 80s as a young child, pre-internet, how in some ways how like isolated and lost we were as a society, because we relied upon more top-down authority systems to give us our information, right? Like watch the news and then the evening news to get your news download, which was produced and controlled by a corporation. You would to even know, I look back in college, like to know where to go out that night. And this was kind of special. You couldn't just go on a social media platform and go to your networks and immediately know what's going on or have your digital invites. You had to talk to people and you had to network and you had to find out, and you had to go look at flyers on a wall somewhere. And you just had to take the gamble that that flyer is being that party. You hopefully know somebody that can vouch for it, or you're walking into a potential really bad environment and you didn't know, right? And so there was a benefit to that because it was more mysterious and wild and wonderful and in many ways glorious because of the mystery and the adventure. But also I know of many people who were hurt because they didn't have the security of connection that we have now. Right? So it's a dual-edged sword, of course. Everything is in this realm of polarity and duality. That being said, though, I don't think anybody can argue against the fact that the internet has had massive effects in towards us growing up towards becoming a more evolved consciousness, or at least in the cycle of right now. I believe we are in mass, we have these grand cycles of evolution, awakening, and then the fall, and then up again, down. And us as a planetary species or as a global consciousness, that is just the natural wave. And in the end, but that's not to say the individual is victim to that or is forced to be on that wave. The individual, it has the ability to ascend out of that wave into the next wave, and go up and leave this realm and not be stuck on the hamster wheel of reincarnation. So that being said, I personally believe the internet is a massive tool for us to move on to that next stage of consciousness. So all the internet is, and even though it was developed inside some pretty interesting circles in the U.S. military with DARPA in the ARPANET, which was the original protocols, and they actually were working in conjunction. This is in the mid '60s with scholastics and academia in universities, and also with the RAND Corporation. They were just developing open source protocols. They were developing protocols that would allow for information to be sent across time and space immediately to another person. And they wanted those protocols to be repeatable and used throughout all the different agencies in the government and in private, in the private as well. And so that was a massive invention that was then sort of manipulated and controlled for a long time just by private institutions. It was just used by large universities and corporations that worked with the government up until the late 80s, when the World Wide Web was developed at CERN by Sir Berners-Lee and some other really highly occulted individuals in very interesting circles to essentially make sure that they're encapsulating the ability to use the internet by the public in a way that is controlled from the very outset. So the World Wide Web was from the very beginning, which is the World Wide Web is the protocols that are used to use websites, right? To effectively have an interface with the internet. The internet is just the packaging of information and sending it from one point to the other. The World Wide Web is the interface that we know is like the domain name system, for instance, the DNS system, which is like how you name your website, right? And then the protocols to packet to essentially like JavaScript and these different languages to allow us to take this information, put it in a visual way so that we can then view it across the world on the internet. So that's the World Wide Web. That's what we use for essentially everything traditionally. That was what started with like AOL and CompuServe, and they had these internet service providers, right, that allowed us to get on the internet with our dial-up modems and all that. Well, before that, we didn't have the World Wide Web, and I was getting on the internet traditionally through how it was originally created, which was just by essentially having my own server, and then having a modem, and being able to connect to others that had their own server, and just using the traditional internet protocols to connect. And we weren't using AOL or CompuServe or any of these other third parties. We were just doing this as it was originally designed. And then even we fell prey to the internet service providers over time because it was super convenient, and it had all these wonderful services and really cool things. And it allowed for email to work really easily, because email, once again, is just an open source protocol. It doesn't require a Google to use email. We just use Google, like G Suite or whatever it's called now, because they have set up the infrastructure for us. So we've lost the original intention of what the internet can be, because they've essentially corralled us into this sort of digital landscape that is really a digital gulag, if you will. So Internet 1.0 was the AOLs, you got mail, right? And like this kind of thing. And then like a lot of the boards and stuff people would get on, like the forums and things like that. And then you had Web 2.0, which is more insidious, because at least with Web 1.0, you still had a bit of the original wild kind of frontier of what the internet could still be. And then with Web 2.0, you had the crystallization of centralization through corporate takeover of the internet. And so that is the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Twitters,
the Googles,
the Googles. And essentially what that was they've provided even more structured interface so that people have, have to do less work, right, to use the internet. They made it way more efficient and way more convenient for those who think they are getting what they want out of the internet, but they don't really know, because these are just being offered to them as the only really, yes, it was based around a marketplace, and so people could choose, of course, and there were traditional market, there were some traditional free market aspects around it, but really when you dig deep into it, you realize Facebook was developed by DARPA. It was not the whole storyline of where Facebook comes from is complete fabrication. It's a narration that they give you. It's a story. All of these mainstream systems, from Facebook to Google to essentially to Amazon, they all have roots deep into the occult, and they all have roots into military industrial complex. Basically, it's means of waging war upon the population. And so when we start to understand where Web 2.0 is now, we can really see the pitfalls of going down this path because of censorship, because of there's been some beautiful documentaries out showing how these systems have been devised to take advantage of our own biology and our endocrine system to tap into our human need to be feel loved and have attention and all that. And so then we now have this toxic environment on social media that's created division and this polarity of like left versus right, and that feeds all into their beautiful, in their mind, their beautiful Hegelian dialect. Right? So Qortal. What the hell is Qortal? So Qortal is a bunch of renegades like myself who remember what the internet was supposed to be, who remember the beauty and power of being able to connect with another living soul anywhere in the world instantly without anyone getting in between. And so Qortal was developed to become the new internet, to go back to what the internet was supposed to be. And we are implementing certain technologies like blockchain and newer stuff like social media and things like that in a way that is fully transparent, open source, and done in a way that to serve the people that are using it. So blockchain is just another technology. It's an open source technology that can be used for great good or great evil. Yep. And we are using it, hopefully, all works out well as I see it, for great good. Mm-hmm. And so what a blockchain is just an open source, public, transparent, essentially collaborative server, if you will. It's just a ledger that allows you for a community of people using it, whether that be a global community like with Bitcoin, or a smaller community, even a private community. You can have private blockchains. The transparency to see all the input and the consensual agreement to what that input is in a single place that everybody, ideally, if you do a blockchain correctly, is supporting and being able to witness. Unlike a traditional server, which is typically behind a intellectual property firewall, where that server is centrally controlled, and which it has value as well, but is centrally controlled and editable at any time by whoever's controlling it. So a blockchain, if it's done correctly, is not editable or changeable once the consensus agrees that is the truth. And that is a massive, massive important thing to understand. And you can see how that could be extremely valuable for something like money or something like voting. And so Qortal has a blockchain backbone that is used for its community consensus on what the entire network agrees is truth about the individuals involved with it, and also the money that is generated through the network and the network itself. Now, the data itself isn't stored on the blockchain, but the metadata is. And it looks like just...
Yeah, lost. That's all right. She'll be back. Something happened to her. That's all right. We can...
So it was... I'm glitching out for a second there. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, so it's just been a wonderful ride, because Qortal was developed with this original kind of cypherpunk mentality that was the origination of crypto, the internet from the 90s, which was just this idea that we can use these open source tools, we can use encryption and all this stuff to protect ourselves against centralized predatory control, and bring power back to our ability to do commerce, to communicate peer-to-peer. That's a very important idea, without having to rely upon a third party. And it's really digital sovereignty. And so Qortal was designed from the ground up with these principles in mind. And it is a really beautiful system, because we will be the first to admit it's not perfect. I don't know if there is any way to make a perfect system like this. It is malleable in the sense that the community has the ability to decide in the future of Qortal and where Qortal can go. It is unmalleable once that decision has been created. And what I mean by that is once there's consensus and the community agrees that they vote and they agree that there is a change to the code base, for example, that is set in stone on the blockchain, and the whole community knows moving forward, this is what our current agreement is. Down the line, if we find that needs to be changed, then we come back, find quorum, and then make the next change. But the beauty of blockchain, once again, is you can't have somebody go in and manipulate and control and pull shifty stuff, because it's all transparent. Everybody can see it, and everybody knows if somebody is acting fraudulently or is acting in out of coherence or incongruous to natural law, which is, respecting your brothers and sisters and nature and working in harmony and truth. And really, if a blockchain is developed correctly, it's just a universal truth machine. And that can swing both ways.
Accountability, responsibility. I love that. A truth machine in the time where truth seems to be so malleable, right?
Exactly.
So where Mike is Qortal now, like in terms of like the functionality of it and
that was kind of the base layer of the philosophy and kind of where it came out of, and giving a little input on where we are with the internet now. In terms of Qortal, so Qortal started being developed back in around 2014. There's a gentleman, Jason Crow, who's one of the founders, was at Music in Sky last year on the stage with me, Liz. I don't know if you saw that talk, but Jason's a badass, and he's just this IT technology guy that since he was a teenager was working on networks and systems like that, and basically got into crypto because he saw the beauty and power of the original Bitcoin white paper and what that intentionality potentially could do for the world. So he's then by 2014, he was already seeing the corporatization and the manipulation and essentially the downfall of crypto, because it had already gone back to the legacy systems of manipulation, control, greed, hijacking by those with power, etc. And so Qortal, he was like, I'm going to make a system that gives all of this back to the people, and the original intention of what the cypherpunks in the 90s were trying to do. And so it has its own original code base that was developed from the ground up, starting around then. And it has basically been developed by volunteers, by developers in the open source market that just were drawn to the philosophy and the intention behind the project. There was no corporation ever created. There's no board of people over looking it over and stuff. So it was in the underground for many years being developed, literally through just sweat and blood and tears. And then in two years ago, it finally was ready to launch. So by that time, I'd already met Jason and worked on some other projects with him, and was fully into Qortal and helping on the back end, developing different. My superpowers in this space is really in consensus and the philosophy and the understanding of like the root structuring of why we need this technology. So I'm kind of the philosopher of Qortal, and so I got involved in 2018. And so about 2 years before we launched, and had the pleasure of working with the devs and everybody in the final development of launching the project. And so we launched in 2020 and with phase one, which was just to develop the network. So what Qortal is, once again, is if we're reinventing the internet, what all the internet is a network. It's just a network of servers connected over a line that is sending data and packets, and then it's compressing information in a packet, sending it across a line. Typically that would be a phone line, what it originally was, and then of course they developed Ethernet, right? And they developed. They started using the cable infrastructure that we had through television, and then of course the telecom system that we had through like DSL and all this. So all you're doing is sending packets of information from one server to another. And so understanding that, in order to recreate the new internet, we need people to basically be a node for this new network. So we needed to find a way to incentivize people to essentially to go through the work to host their own node. And all a node is just in a network is just somebody who's hosting the packets of information that can be sent to another node. It's just think of it as a sort of web. Literally, that's why they call it the World Wide Web, right? It's just a web of nodes. It's literally what we are here as human species. Right. We're all on a web of consciousness, right? And we're all here in an individual node holding your own consciousness. Well, this is just being replicated in a digital ecosystem. And so how do we incentivize folks to go through the process of doing that? And then how do we make it as easy as possible and as energy efficient as possible? Because those who understand Bitcoin and how it works, it uses a protocol called proof of work, which is a brilliant protocol that actually solved the double spend problem of digital currency, which just means when you're dealing with something digital, which is just zeros and one code, and you're trying to send something that's supposed to have a definitive value in the real world, how do you stop somebody from just copying and pasting that digital money? And so if I send Tara my digital dollar, how does Liz know that digital dollar is attached to the real world and not just being replicated and duplicated? How does it even have value then, right?
Yeah.
Well, by using a blockchain, and once again, that immutable truth machine, we can set that value in understanding that specific dollar is locked into time. And that time knows that has just been spent because I just sent that to you, and it can't now go, because at 9:53 a.m. my time, I just sent that to Tara, and we just put it on a global ledger that everybody witnessed and knows in time, locked in time now, that was sent to you. Yep. That can now not be sent to Liz because it's already Tara now has it. It's now on the ledger that Tara owns it, right?
Yeah.
And so in order for that sort of brilliant system to work, we need computers, we need people that want to be a node to validate that and to do the work to make sure that consensus is being done. And so proof of work is just computers competing against each other to as an incentive. So they're doing that to do the work to maintain the ledger, but the incentive is by racing against the clock to get this done by doing computational work. The winner gets a Bitcoin, gets currency, gets a payment, right? And that payment, of course, is inherent to the ecosystem. So that is the money that they are creating the value. It's like it's a weird loop of like, we're creating this money and we're getting rewarded that money for creating it. So it's creating this new value system, and it was really ingenious and amazing. However, it takes a lot of energy to do. So that is a problem. My wolf dog out here is howling. So
oh, is he? Oh,
here.
Is he howling?
No, but you can see just
you can see him.
Okay. So anyways, I might have to let her in just a second.
No worries.
But yeah, so brilliant model, and I'm a big fan of Bitcoin for that, the original Bitcoin, not what it is now, for that brilliant innovation, and it really has a place in the world. However, that being said, with Qortal, we saw a lot of problems with that. One, the energy waste. Two, it is set up for centralization because it's a race of computation power. So those that have more money and the ability to create more and more computing power, because the software developers in Bitcoin changed the original intention of the Satoshi Nakamoto paper, and they went and messed it all up. And they made it so only certain mining systems can work. And what that created was a race for bigger and bigger and bigger mining systems, which created these huge mining warehouses in China and such, with people with more money could have more power over the network. And so we wanted to take it back to the people and create a new system purely based on time, not based on computational power, and based on collaboration, not based on competition, based on abundance, not based on scarcity. And so essentially going back to, and this is kind of where I play in as the philosopher and really trying to guide the network and guide the intentionality of Qortal, is based on natural law and based on how nature inherently works. Cooperation, collaboration, gifting, having trust and faith in each other. And understanding that if we develop this network that is based on the true intentionality of the creator and not based on fear and based on scarcity, which is what traditional markets are based on and traditional supposedly money value is based on, we can create a whole new beautiful world that is way more holistic and way more in tune with a raising of consciousness. And so that is Qortal in a nutshell, is that it was developed. It was developed to, the incentivization was, the idea is that we're all just going to share in the pot. So instead of the winner winning the little prize of, on the Bitcoin network, Bitcoin, is that by you running a node, instead of spending all this time and energy and having to have a crazy computer, you can just run a node over time. And then over time, as you prove yourself, you go through levels. Just in life, and like how I was in the beginning, how I was saying how I was lost and how I unfolded into awakening. In Qortal, you start kind of lost because you're like, how do I do this? Okay, I got to figure this out and get this running. And then over time, as you put the work in towards joining the community, getting into the Qortal ecosystem and spending the time to just have that node running, then you increase in your levels, and then you increase in your shared reward amongst everybody in your level across the world. And so every minute, no matter what level you are, once you're sponsored in the system, you are earning Qortal. You're earning Qort. And then, so that was the launch, was that, all right, that beautiful system, which was creating the network. Now we have more full nodes running than Bitcoin. We have more.
Wow.
Yeah. So
amazing.
Pretty amazing. I think Bitcoin has something like we're over, I think we're at like 7,000 full nodes, 8,000 full nodes running. And they say Bitcoin has like 10,000 full nodes running, but those nodes aren't attached to individuals. That's like, a lot of that is like one entity running 1,000 nodes, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's actually scary, that the size of Bitcoin and how big it is, that it has that few of full nodes running. That is frightening, actually. So, yeah. So that was the first phase of Qortal. Then the second phase was launching the Qortal trade portal, which is just the ability for people to come in with another cryptocurrency. And we support only cryptocurrencies that are fair. So ones that weren't pre-mined or weren't manipulated, that were launched from the beginning as the ability for anybody to mine and get in. So those barely exist, to be honest. So, but we try to support the ones that are the most fair. So believe it or not, a joke coin like Doge coin is actually more fair than Ethereum. It actually is more conducive to the original cypherpunks than Ethereum. So we support Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bitcoin, some other smaller coins like Ravencoin, Digibyte, soon Pirate Chain, which is a privacy coin. And what we did, we were the first to do it, is we actually have a true decentralized trade portal where somebody can come in with Litecoin and they cross-chain directly with somebody on Qortal and to transfer Qort for Litecoin. And so it's not going through an intermediary of any sort into a holding account or anything. It's literally, I have this much Qortal, or I have this much Qort, I have this much Litecoin. This is how much value I see of Qort. I want to give you this much Litecoin for this much Qort. So they go into a smart contract, and then it exchanges literally directly across the cross chains into their account. So that was the second phase. That was our trade portal, which was important for ability to initiate commerce, for people to come in with fiat dollars, for instance, into the Qortal ecosystem, so that they could buy something like Litecoin, come in and then get Qort as an investment opportunity or as an ability to take part in the network. And now the third phase, which is launched into initial beta, was the actual Qortal data network, which is the new internet. So now that we have the incentivization for people to run their node and help create this new internet, and now that we have the ability for people to bring the actual currency in, the energetic flow in, right, the current. Yeah. Now we have the third and final phase, which is starting, which is the actual data that people will be transferring and using, and that's right now just websites. Anybody can host a website for free on Qortal. And it's amazing because it's fully decentralized, it's redundant. So anybody in the network that chooses to follow your website is now supporting and hosting your website on their end. So they are downloading the whole website, and now they're seeding it essentially, just like like if you've ever used a BitTorrent, right, for downloading music or a movie. They are now seeding your website, and it just got stronger. So the once your website is being supported, it's just a factor of how many people find value of your website, and by each person following it, it just grows and grows and grows across the ecosystem and gets stronger and stronger and more redundant and faster and faster and faster. And that's free. It's free to do that. that's the other thing about Qortals we're trying to have is feeless as possible. So you don't, so imagine that an ecosystem that is fair, decentralized, open source, transparent, and doesn't cost anything to take part of, in terms of, at least for some basic functionality, like hosting a website, where most people have to pay, for a basic shared hosting platform, which is not secure, which, has all sorts of security issues. You're still paying 10, 15, 20 bucks a month, to GoDaddy or whatever to have your website up and running.
Yep.
So, so that's exciting. We've launched the third phase, and that is just in pure beta right now. And then that will evolve into Q apps, which will then allow for like a decentralized YouTube, a decentralized Zoom, and decentralized e-commerce, which is going to be massive. And that is all inside Qortal. Okay, so that is not playing in the World Wide Web, like quote unquote Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is just, once again, the next hijacking. Okay. It's not actually conducive to the original cypherpunk vision of the P2P direct interaction and sovereign space of what we can do through encryption and through blockchain and these networks. It's actually playing directly in with Silicon Valley and the corporate sphere and the big business and centralized banks and government and all that. So we got to be very careful with how we navigate this technology moving forward.
I love all this. We actually were looking because we just launched our website, and we had a talk, and we were trying to understand how to do it. And I was talking, you may know a couple of my friends, Isaac and Dustin. Isaac has been up there, and
love Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac's my to-go, well, how do I do it? And it's like, I'm going to try to break it down for you. Like, I'm trying to understand.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Isaac is awesome. We're working with Isaac with Music in Sky too. He's helping us on some stuff.
Yeah, and so Tara and I were having the conversation of how do we do this in that world? And it was too foreign to us to understand the mechanics of it and how to implement that. But that's our vision. It's actually it's something okay, this is eventually what we are doing.
Yeah.
Well, we did I did actually get a domain we did get an unstoppable domain. And then this was a whole several hour thing that I went through with this guy on Unstoppable Domains to get our website on. And so he explained to me, you're going to have to download it from here to get it, because we had already done it on a different service, our website. And the crux was why we didn't use it yet is because anybody who went to our website would have to have an extension, an Unstoppable Domains extension on their browser to even navigate to our site. So it's definitely
there's so many problems with all of this. It's trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Yeah. It's trying to pretend that we can stay in this corrupt ecosystem and somehow fix it and make it so it's quote unquote decentralized. If people throw this term decentralized around a lot, it's like the newest hot buzzword. I'm sorry, guys, but the DNS system, no matter what, is owned by a centralized corporation. It's not a open source, even a consortium of open source or government agencies. It's literally a private company that controls the domain name system of all websites in the World Wide Web. It's mind-bogglingly crazy that we've allowed this to happen. Yeah. So the World Wide Web is ruined. I don't see how we can get around those problems. So people trying to use the World Wide Web to do decentralized stuff, in the end, you're going to run into all the same problems. So it's really hard for people to wrap their heads around Qortal because it is a parallel system. It is not in the World Wide Web, which is how everybody accesses the internet. So people are like, well, how the hell can I even use Qortal if I can't send my grandma to it? Well, so we get that. And so there are ways to actually have your Qortal website, which is in the Qortal network. So if right now, for someone to go in and see your Qortal website, they would have to be running a Qortal node on their computer. And that can run on any computer. It can run on a Mac, PC, Linux machine, whatever. And then they can go in and pull up your site and look at all your information and your content. Well, people are challenged by that because it's like, well, how am I supposed to get to the public? How am I supposed to get to people who don't know about Qortal? Well, there is a way. You are giving up a lot of the power of Qortal, but you can set up a proxy and go through a traditional domain and have that routed to essentially through an API into it's still being hosted on Qortal, but it'll be visually displayed on a proxy domain. So you can do that. However, we are developing what we're calling light nodes, which will allow for people to run Qortal on even a phone without having to have it completely synced and have all the hard download and everything that is restrictive to grandma. Even though my dad, who's in his 70s, is in Qortal and on QChat and loving it.
Oh, that's awesome.
QChat is our decentralized kind of Telegram type service on there that allows for complete and total decentralized communication and group creation and all that. It's encrypted and really powerful tool for doing truly unstoppable communication. Yeah. But that being said, we are developing means to allow for easier access to Qortal. But Qortal is a parallel system. It is not does not work with World Wide Web. And I think that's what is hard for people to wrap their head around. And then people start to, we get this a lot, this and criticism, and I get it. It's like, well, you guys, how do we know you're not creating the next internet, right? How do we know, or excuse me, the next World Wide Web? How do we know you're not creating the next corrupt space that because you guys think you're so awesome that you're, we have to go over to you? Well, the difference here is that it's completely open source. It's completely transparent. It's community based. Unlike the World Wide Web, which is corporate owned, anybody can go in, look at the code base, can join the community, can start taking part in Qortal's unfolding, and it's all with the leveling system, which is being developed more and more. You'll basically, by joining the network and supporting the network, you're creating your own value, your own authority, so that you can have weight in voting on the future of Qortal. So it's totally different than the original implementation of World Wide Web, which was companies like CompuServe, AOL, deciding how the internet's supposed to be accessed. So, but it is kind of taking that Apple model that, when I say Apple, like Macintosh, Apple model of having a closed ecosystem so that we can have an experience still that is a little bit more curated and controlled, even though it's open source and anybody can come in that's a quality developer and get vetted and come in and help out on creating that ecosystem. It's more like Apple in the sense that it's a closed system in that way. So, and that's why I like Apple. I've been actually using Apple products for way too long because it all works really well, right?
Yeah,
unlike Microsoft or like the PCs where it's all these different companies trying to fit and work together and everything's always breaking and you have viruses and all this stuff, which are the only real viruses, by the way.
Right.
So
plug that in there real quick.
Yeah.
So Mike, I love, and that's why your piece and the philosophy is so important here because it's not convenient yet, right? Like Qortal and that's how we know you're not creating the next easy World Wide Web because it's actually not very easy to get into yet at this time, right? But if we have the foundation and the philosophy and know the intention and why are we doing this, right. even though it may take us a little longer, we may have to go a few more steps, right? Like when I was trying to get this unstoppable domain, and that's the same with crypto. Even though I know that's a whole other conversation, but it's important that people can connect with the reason why this has been created, even though it's it's not as convenient and as easy as Web 2 because we're and there's
we've been literally enslaved by convenience.
Yes,
and they know this. So and this is beautiful about this, and this is actually something I really appreciate because about design. I have a web development company. We design websites. I understand the usability factor, and being able to onboard people into a system and as easy as possible. We obviously want to make the user experience as best as possible. Of course, nobody wants to get frustrated with trying to access communications and commerce and all that. But the kind of the tragedy of the commons, if you will, of working in open source is that you don't have that centralized sort of top-down system that you would have in a traditional design firm of a corporation like Apple, right? So it's kind of like you gotta, it's unfortunate in that way that you kind of miss that. But in the end, if we do our job correctly, we will get there, because we're attracting enough amazing, powerful people that are really good at what they do, that they will bring in their skill sets, and we will just continually tweak and make it easier and easier and easier to use. And it will get there. It won't be as fast, but it will get to the point where the usability and the user interface and everything will be beautiful, and it will be awesome. And also, the more people that come in, the power of open source is the more people that come in, the more, and since there's no intellectual ownership, we don't care. Like, even the logo, like if you feel like you have a cooler Qortal logo, you can put up your own Qortal logo on your own systems and in your thing. We don't care. In the end, yes, we do need brand recognition right now, but in the end, we don't even care about our damn logo. It's beyond logo, right? Yeah. It's literally the network is all that matters. So people can come in and skin their systems however they want. And if they find that they have a more beautiful user interface, then they can take that out to the market and offer it for people to interact with the Qortal code base and have a way better user interface. Awesome. Do it. Go for it. And so that is the power of open source. And so right now, we are supporting the user interface that we have developed. But if someone comes around and makes a more beautiful user interface, it's like the beautiful example of this is Linux. Linux is a success story of open source technology. It is just an open source code base for an operating system, just like it's an alternative to, the OS or Microsoft, right? And it uses just the Linux code base. It's just a code base. And now there's all sorts of beautiful user interfaces, Mint and Ubuntu and all these ones that allow you to use it. And those are just free for anybody to go access. And they compete against each other, but they also collaborate and cooperate as well. And it's just a gorgeous ecosystem. And Linux is very successful. Like, a lot of people that do hardcore development in software and stuff use Linux because it's dependable, it's open source, it's transparent. And so we're just embracing that overall aesthetic and philosophy in Qortal as much as we can. So if you're listening to this or watching this and are a developer or have any sort of superpower that we would love to have, like, come over, whether it's marketing or doing videos or writing copy or whatever. It's just all about coming into the community and helping out in any way you can. Running a node, I'll sponsor you. All the sponsorship thing is, in order to combat fraud and combat bots and combat a lot of the grift and stuff that we see in the traditional, not only traditional digital landscape, but also in crypto, because most of crypto is grift and fraud and scams. We've tied it to real humans by having a sponsorship program, which just means, and this isn't a pyramid scheme, this isn't like multi-level or anything like that. All it is just anybody who's level 5 or above, or a founder, somebody who's put this sweat, blood, and tears over years and years to create this. If you want to get in and be able to mint, so be able to get in and run a node and earn the coin with everybody, you just have to be sponsored by somebody who is either level 5, which means they've been minting now for over 2 years. So they've proven themselves over time to be dedicated to the network, or a founder, and will sponsor you, which means if the people doing the sponsorship correctly or doing it correctly, means we've in some way vetted you, which means I know you're a real person with some intentionality. You want to come on board and help Qortal, so then I'll sponsor you. You have to prove yourself for 7,200 blocks, or about a week of running a node. And once you've done that, which means you've put forth effort to put your node up and have it connect to the internet and running it for 7,200 blocks. You are now self-sponsored. You can now then, the sponsorship goes away and now you can start minting, and then you can start going up levels too. When you hit level 5 in a few years, then you can start sponsoring your brothers and sisters and friends and family. Yeah. So it's a really interesting model because it ties humans and it ties connectivity in the real world to the network. So, but I can sponsor you. Just come find me on Telegram or Discord, or email me, mike@alphavedic.com. If you're attracted to this, and I'll sponsor you. Just tell me how you know me, and or how you heard about this, and then you can start taking part in Qortal.
Beautiful,
exciting conversation, because it's the unfolding of the realm of awareness into this physical, and then bringing it again to this online thing that we can't necessarily see and touch, but we are creating together, and it's very exciting.
Well, the beautiful thing about this technology is that it's a rudimentary way for us to defy space, right? So we are all in different parts of the country right now, but we're all together in this digital space. There's value to that. Like, that is pretty badass. Like, whether I know a lot of people in our space have the fears of the metaverse and the digital simulacra of this, but there's also a ton of value to this, and we cannot deny that. So let's take this value and apply it in a way that's holistically inclined to allow us to connect through an honest, transparent system that is in and of itself serving us. We're not serving it, right? And
that's right.
And then develop community around it, and then see where we can take it from here. Like in Q Chat, it's amazing. We have all these awesome, badass sovereign souls in there, because most people have found out about Qortal through myself or people championing us, like Sayer G from Green Med Info. Yeah. Even Charles Eisenstein, if you know who he is, he's on Qortal. I don't know how active he is, but we got him set up running a node. Nice. The Law for Mankind guys are very aware of it. Who else recently? Ernie Hancock, who's like a legend in the sovereignty space. We call him the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the freedom movement. He's been recently interviewing us and is now full on Qortal and promoting it. And so these kind of people are in Q Chat, which is our decentralized chat system on Qortal, and are just hanging out there now all day. And no, not all, they check in. And
that's all they do now.
But you can create groups in there. And so people have created like sovereignty groups and like, all sorts of different natural law. I'm in like a beekeeping group. I've started a conspiracy and woo-woo group in there. There's a music sharing group that's one of the most popular, that people share their favorite music. And it's just a new community, an online community. And it just feels good because, everybody that's in there sees the vision, are doing the work to run the node and be taking part in the network consensus, and are all taking a little piece. They're all pitching in a little bit to make sure the community is actually up and running correctly. So you feel good when you're in there doing it. It's really cool.
Yeah. And as you were saying, when you're talking about the why is the fuel, right? And as you know your why and why you're doing that, there is that desire to just contribute. And I think also it moves from, this is what's being done, like we have the World Wide Web and all of that, but now it's like what it is that we want to do. Like you take that power in being the creator in your own story, and then you create that instead of just being thrown around.
Yes.
Kind of
Liz,
like
you nailed it. Sovereignty. You are driving your own ship on Qortal.
Yes.
And so it will require your effort and your awareness and your work and your disposition. And what else do you want? And I feel like that's also the next level for a lot of people, is to be like, okay, it's not gonna be as convenient, but what is the trade-off? Right?
Yeah.
What are you really getting from all of these conveniences? I mean, if we look around and we see people's state of health, mental, physical, emotional, and I mean, what is it that you're gaining from all of this convenience?
Yeah.
So we live in a debt-based, well, not all of us, but we're all forced into this quagmire of a debt-based public system, right? So everything has been developed around debt of the spirit, debt of our time, debt, of course, of the way money works. And so the Silicon Valley technocrat system is still doing that. So everything, while it seems like it's convenient, is actually just indebting us more and more to the system, our security, our time, our who we are, in terms of our privacy, right? We are increasing that debt to every time that we think we can just go on and download this really convenient app that's going to give us more convenience. Well, not all. There's a lot of great apps out there, but a lot of the mainstream big time apps are spying on you. They are harnessing your loosh, and for many ways, even if it is just for the marketplace to sell stuff to you, a lot of it is much more nefarious, but it's indebting you to the system more and more. So we need to get out of that debt. And in order to do that, it's like going, for instance, here's a great analogy. It's like, you can live in a city and you can work for a Fortune 500 company, and you can be making it's harder and harder to do that these days. But the American dream of the millennials, right, is you get this kick-ass job out of college and you're getting a six-figure income, and you get to travel, on your vacation time, and you got this sweet apartment with your Netflix and your large screen television, and you can go down to Whole Foods and get delicious organic food and all that. Well, we know that's all a mirage, right? You're now instead, actually, what you're doing is you're indebting your health to all the toxicity of that environment. You're indebting the planet to the toxicity of the food that's is centralized, controlled by Amazon now at Whole Foods and all that. You're indebting your bank account because you're quite likely not saving. And that money with inflationary rate now is required to be spent, because if you hold it in your pocket even for a day, it's lost so much value. And so actually that whole mirage is just your servitude towards debt. And so to get out of that, we're going to have to do a little work. So I'm a big fan of we talked about Tom Burnett, but like Owen Benjamin, he can be a bit out there, right? And he can cause a lot of people to get triggered. I know he is a comedian, so that's what he does. But one thing he's shown is the elbow grease it takes to get out of that system and go start a farm and start putting the work in, which is not easy, to start raising your own food, growing your own food, building your own community, and taking the risk that's inherent to that. But he's getting out of that debt. Same here. That's why I moved my family up here. We are getting out of all that different forms of debt. So in Qortal, that's the idea, is getting away from the debt of the digital ecosystem and having the power. It's going to take some work, but then having the power to create abundance, create that prosperity according to your desires, and not the convenience and the debt that the system is offering you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a super simple way to say that too is it's like a dead space versus a life space. Right? Which do you choose? Right? We're creating life. That's why Qortal, the feeling of being there, is so great, because people are there to create what supports aliveness, and that's what we are. And when we give in to that convenience, it's just, if you really tune into that energy and feel into it, it's not alive.
It's not.
There's nothing alive about it. Yeah.
It's the infinite. Yeah, it's the infinite death cycle of scrolling through TikTok.
Oh God. Oh. Yeah.
I mean, it is frightening how quickly people are falling down this path towards this sort of digital enslavement. Because that's their goal in the end. People ask me, where do you see this sort of great reset going? I see this. There is a polarization going on right now, and no one can deny it. There's this sort of direction towards the great reset, which is the technocratic centralization and all that crystallization towards more and more of the same. And then you've got this great awakening of these people breaking out of that system. It's happening. People are waking up to this and going, I don't want that for my life. I don't want that for my kids. What can I do separate and develop a more, natural, loving, holistic, alive ecosystem for my life experiences. And you're seeing that rapid development of these two divergent paths, and those who choose to stay in the legacy mainstream sort of, digital system there of debt are going to be suffering more and more and more. Yeah. And there's going to be more pain. And it's just going to come to a threshold of how much pain. It's like the same thing of people who don't understand their body and take allopathic medicine approach towards pain or symptoms instead of going to the underlying cause of the symptom. And so in the end, they either have a health crisis that forces them to wake up, or they literally die.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's what we are going through as a global consciousness right now.
Yes.
I agree. I have a story of hope. This past weekend was my birthday, and we were sitting, my friend was at a resort and we all went to visit, and there was a young guy who came in with two other young kids, and they sat down and he had a book. And so, he said something, we all started to talk. And we said, wow, you have a book. What are you reading? And he said, oh, it's a story about this girl who falls in love with this organism, kind of like AI. Ooh. And they don't live on Earth anymore because Earth has been taken over. So it's, very uninhabitable at that point. But they're trying to save that space that she and her family and friends still live, which is another planet or whatever. And we said, what do you think about that? And he said, well, I'll tell you what just happened to me, and that may tell you what I think about the book. So he seemed like he couldn't be older than 20 years old. He said, I just got rid of all my social media because I noticed that what I was doing was watching everybody else do what I wanted to do. I wasn't doing any of what I wanted to do. I became depressed. I became sad. I was angry. I was scrolling for hours on TikTok at a time. And I woke up one day and I said, this is not how I want to live. So I enrolled myself into recreational therapy. And I said, what is that? And he said, I'm helping people reconnect with nature, people who are struggling with mental, things or whatever you want to call that, having a hard time. And he said, this is the only way forward. And we were so excited to see such a young man. And he said, I even have Kindle. I have the book app on my phone, but I like going to the library and getting the paper book. Something about turning the page. And we were like, I think
that's awesome. It's like the youth hopefully are going to turn into spiritual hipsters. So, it's like, there's something about hipsters that I was a little bit of a hipster, but like this, romance about going back and listening to vinyl and reading books and, wearing reused, recycled clothing and all that. There's there's a lot of beauty to that.
Yes.
And I think that's a fantastic story. And there's a lot we can learn from that for sure.
We're remembering, and as you said, some of us for whatever reason, and I think that the people who decide to kind of go on that path and, continue to bury themselves into that, I have a lot of reverence for those souls because at some level they are helping other souls to awaken, right, to what's really going on. They're really showcasing the possibilities of that. And we're seeing the death and destruction and the disconnect of all that just helps us know our why a little deeper. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So, Mike, we're going to ask our question we like to ask at the end here, which is, what have you learned about yourself in your own exploration for truth?
Well, I've learned that's a great question. I've learned that for me personally, the learning never ends. And that I've learned modesty. I've learned to listen and listen more and really be as welcoming and modest to any other perspective and be patient with it and not be so triggered by it, because traditionally I think I'm a Virgo and very fiery personality. And a lot of times the first to jump the gun in terms of like, oh, you're wrong, or you're not awake enough or whatnot. And I think I'm learning more and more right now that to have compassion and patience and to listen more, because there are lessons we can learn from every single person, every single living man and woman on this planet, whatever their perspective is, even if it's freaking Joe Biden. So, even though he might not even be a living man. So
that's right. I was going to say
Stepford Biden, I call him. Stepford Biden is not a good example. But that being said, as long as they're not like an NPC. Right. But learning to really, I've learned that about myself, which is to slow down, to let go, to listen, and to really have compassion for what I'm listening to right now. If that's triggering something in me, then why? Why is that triggering that? And, so that's been a massive sort of growth that I've recently just been going through since I did the event, which was an online symposium thing I did with some beautiful, powerful creators that have helped me really grow up in new ways that I never thought was possible. And so life is beautiful because it is always like every turn in this hero's journey, there's a new, amazing, mind-blowing awakening that happens. And so enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and do it in a way that is open and as compassionate and respectful as you can to everyone around you. Even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah.
And one more question that's coming up for me. Sorry. Was
last?
I know it's always our last question, but something else is coming. It's quick. Mike, it's just, what does your source connection feel like for you? However you define that for yourself.
My source connection is definitely, oh man, that's a great question. It feels like love. It just feels like my source connection feels easy, and it's just infinite love. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for being here. I think maybe now we have two final questions for you, because we've had explored what that source connection feel like.
Yeah.
Official, and I'm glad you brought it up. And thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on, and I hope to see you guys at the next Music in Sky.
Woo.